So good morning, I'm here at the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust St Lawrence Field Nature Reserve on the Isle of Wight. Just having a quick look at, see how good this area is for wintering yellowhammers, and more to the point, whether it's any good for Cirl Buntings. So this is right in the centre of what was originally planned to be a Cirl Bunting reintroduction site, translocating them from Devon to the Isle of Wight, and one of the ideas was to get these small areas of prime wintering habitat put in place, and this was one of the kind of the centerpieces of Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust St Lawrence Field Nature Reserve. One of the best places to get really good for Cirl Buntings. Not going to do any translocation now because Cirl Buntings have taken things into their own wings, so to speak, and have started to recolonise Dorset quite potentially the start of quite a rapid recolonisation. What we do need to do is to continue to get these kind of places into really good condition for, what's that over there? Starling. That's nice. For yellowhammers and therefore for any recolonising Cirl Bunting. So this is a real hot spot for yellowhammer on the Isle of Wight. Really high density of nesting pairs. And this particular field, St Lawrence Field Nature Reserve, was kind of traditionally managed as arable with old barley crops, and then that kind of management kind of ceased a bit and it went to rough grassland. When it was managed as a kind of a spring barley, old-fashioned barley crop, stubble was left, and it was just superb for wintering yellowhammers. You'd get 80, 90, 100 in here each winter, and it was a real kind of hot spot for them over the winter in this part of the island. And when that ceased, when that kind of arable cultivation ceased and it became rough grassland, it was useless from a yellowhammer farmland boy, well, from a seed-eating farmland bird point of view. It's pretty poor for anything else, to be honest. Well, barn owls and small voles used to love it, but now the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, because of the Cirl Bunting reintroduction project, reinstigated kind of cultivation here. And I'm just having a quick look to see what the quality of the habitat is like from a kind of a yellowhammer stroke colonising Cirl Bunting point of view. And it's clearly been cultivated again recently within the last year, and it's a fairly open kind of tumble down type stubble. I've heard one yellowhammer since I came here. What I will say is there's quite a lot of really nice wintering habitat for yellowhammers and co over that way to the west on Dean Farm, because again the farmers there put in habitat for a potential Cirl Bunting reintroduction project. So I'm not surprised I'm not kicking up a big flock of yellowhammers, but the habitat isn't quite right. I mean, it was probably cultivated, we're in March now, so it's probably cultivated March last year, which was correct. That's the time to do it, so you leave it as long as possible into early spring. The real hungry gap is now really when they've depleted all the seed, because they've been feeding on these stubble fields all winter, and just before the invertebrates start to come out again because it's not quite warm enough. That's the hungry gap, when there's not much seed around and there aren't any invertebrates. So that's when you would expect to have lots of yellowhammers here, and there aren't any. Like I say, that could well be because there's quite a lot of stubble habitat in the surrounding landscape, so they're spread out. Don't know that for sure. This was always, despite there being some wintering habitat in the surrounding landscape, kind of, 10 years ago, all the yellowhammers would come into this field. They come into this edge, this far edge, particularly along the road, along Whitwell Road, and I'm just not kicking any up. So when a barley crop was sown here and it turned into a winter stubble, if you came through here now, there'd be yellowhammers everywhere, and there just aren't. So, message to the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust is good start in terms of getting it back into prime condition for yellowhammers. Cultivating it is a good start. I would be tempted to start sowing a old-fashioned barley crop again, so you've actually got barley stubble rather than tumble down, because the sward just closes up too quickly here, so you really need to get in here and really open up the sward, really plough it up, get a spring crop in here of barley. Yeah, the yellowhammers used to fly up when you flushed them right into this hedgerow along the road here. That was laid, the hedgerow, and unfortunately that laying, I wouldn't have done that personally because it kind of made it totally unsuitable for the birds to fly up into. It was a big, thick, tall hedge. What I would be tempted to do is just thicken it right out into the field, which I think is the aim here. It's what the Wildlife Trust looks like they're aiming to do, because we've got a really nice rough grass margin, which is brilliant from a breeding Cirl Bunting and yellowhammer point of view. And I think they're thickening up the hedge, allowing the bramble and that to spread out. So I wouldn't lay it again in future, but it really hasn't recovered. Well, it kind of has actually. I mean, there's loads of bramble, there's hawthorn. So don't cut the top of the hedge, let it grow taller again, and let it thicken out in this direction into the field, which I think is exactly what the Wildlife Trust is aiming to do. So good work, top points for that. And if you're, you know, there are no Cirl Buntings as far as we know on the Isle of Wight. They've not recolonised yet. They probably will do because they're in Purbeck. And when they do colonise the island again, they'll probably nest in this kind of habitat where you've got a nice thick hedge there. Could do have been a bit taller and thicker. You've got brambles spilling out the base, and you've got grasshopper-rich field margins like this. They have an inordinate fondness for grasshoppers. Cirl Buntings do. That's what they feed the most successful broods of their clutches of chicks on, broods of chicks on. And this kind of juxtaposition, you've got arable there, cultivated ground there, grassy margin and hedgerow. This is perfect Cirl Bunting habitat, at least Cirl Buntings in the UK. Right, let's have a quick look. I'm still not kicking up anything. There's absolutely no wintering birds in here at all. It's shame it's not sunny actually, because there were any Cirl Buntings here and yellowhammers, they'd be singing. This is a time of year when the Cirl Buntings start to sing, and they're very obvious when they're not very obvious, but their song is very distinctive. At very low density they can just not sing, and they can be very hard to detect, which if they're recolonising they would be at very low density. So yeah, the Trust has cultivated the next field along as well, which is really good. Like I say, for a few years this was all just left as rough grassland, which really wasn't any good at all from a yellowhammer stroke Cirl Bunting point of view. And this field is just so important for yellowhammers that really ought to have been a priority. But now it is, which is really good. Well, actually their priority is scarce arable flora, which is quite right, because that's what this reserve is for. It's to conserve some scarce arable plants that are here. It's just coming over this lovely kind of big, thick, central kind of corridor of emerging shrubby habitat and grassy margin. This was just one big open field. Well, I say big, it's a small open field, a couple of hectares I suppose. But by dividing into two and allowing this kind of, not really a hedgerow, it's a shrubland corridor to develop, you're just making it better and better from a yellowhammer stroke Cirl Bunting point of view. And this is great. So they've cultivated this here. This has clearly been cultivated recently, as in, I don't know, it may even be done in the autumn, to be honest. I wonder if they've got some autumn germinating scarce arable plants in here. That's just a guess. This is brilliant. So what I would suggest to the Wildlife Trust is over that side where we just walked, sow a thin, very thin barley crop. So cultivate it again probably mid-March, well we're roughly mid-March now. So cultivate it again soon. Sow a barley crop over there and continue with what you're doing here, because this is really good. You've got areas of cultivation at different times of year. It's worth noting that I've had migrant turtle dove landing in here in spring and feeding, so this kind of management regime where you've got fallow habitat is going to be in spring is going to be exactly what turtle doves want when they arrive back on migration, or from migration into the UK in spring. They need to get back into condition, rebuild the fat reserves that they've depleted on migration, and they're obligate seed eaters, turtle doves, so they only eat seed. And so this kind of fallow habitat, which is potentially rich in seed, is exactly what they need. I'd almost be tempted to do a bit of meddling and spread some seed on here. It looks like they've cultivated a plot over there as well. Brilliant. Great work, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust. So hopefully within the next 3, 4, 5 years, Cirl Buntings will recolonise, and they'll reappear in a place like this, and the reintroduction, the translocation that was kind of being worked up by me when I worked for the Wildlife Trust with Martin de Roterte and the reserves team on the Isle of Wight, that project doesn't need to happen, so it can save some money there and focus on reintroducing choughs and beavers, hopefully. Let's get beavers back. Let's get choughs back as well. Anyway, hope you enjoyed a little walk around the nice little reserve here, and I'll put this on my channel and send a link to the Wildlife Trust and see what we can get done. So I hope you're enjoying this video about Ventnor and the Undercliff. If so, then don't forget there are 2 books I've written. One, Bird Watching Around Ventnor, creatively named, and the second one is Wildlife Watching Around Ventnor. Just short books about the local area that are the subject of this video. Available on Amazon. I'll put a link below for this video, and you can also order it from the library, and it's available in all major bookshops, both of these little booklets, and in a few shops along the Esplanade, like the Longshoremen's Museum and Lady Scarlett's Tea Room as well. But yeah, I'll put a link to the description if you want a slightly deeper dive into the Isle of Wight Undercliff. Then these 2 little booklets might be of interest to you. Just go onto Amazon otherwise and just search for Steve Jones and Ventnor, and you should find them.